Holy shit, we're running late today. Week 11, running back, start sits, coming up next. Week 11 has arrived, and I hope you're in playoff push mode. Every win counts moving forward. We need to make sure that we are maximizing those rosters, so we need to make sure we get our start sits right, and that's hard to do. Let's face it, fantasy is a hard thing to predict. We do the best we can, and sometimes we get it wrong, sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we have a really good week and we get them all right. But a guy that I think is interesting that there's a little bit of trepidation in using entering week 11 is David Montgomery. Only 55% started in ESPN leagues entering into week 11. Now, granted, there is time to get him in the rosters. He is coming off of a bye, so they are going to adjust their rosters as we approach Sunday. But still, at this point, only 55% in starting lineups heading into the weekend. And a guy that looked good out of the bye, going into the bye, I should say, in week 9, got 13 rush attempts for 63 yards. Now, the rush attempts aren't where we wanted to see them, but I think he's going to have more opportunity this week. And those 13 rushing attempts for 63 yards comes out to 4.8 yards per carry, the second most efficient mark of the season in that category. So he came out of the injury looking good. Gets a week off, should have nice fresh legs for the second half of the season. So fresh out of the bye, gets Baltimore, a defense that we used to fear, but now not so much. Granted, they give up a lot in the passing game, but this is a run-first offense in the Chicago Bears. So as long as they keep this close, and they do a pretty good job of that, we should see David Montgomery get really good run coming out of the bye. I see him being a guy that gets anywhere from 16 to 22 touches this week. And if he gets 22 touches, he will deliver for you. If he gets 16 touches, I think he's going to have a really good day. There is the one concern of we have Justin Fields, and he doesn't tend to dump the ball off to running backs. And that tends to be a thing that happens with guys that are mobile at that position. But the fact is this is a true alpha dog that gets work that very few running backs in the league get. And he is coming healthy out of a bye against a defense that you can exploit. We have a Baltimore defense that has had running backs rush over 100 yards 4 times this season and rushed for 2 touchdowns 3 times this season. So you can make plays as a running back against this team. And if he's going to get the work, he's going to make a couple plays because Baltimore just tends to make mistakes on the defensive side. I would say 5 to 6 times, and not just in the secondary, but in the rushing game as well. So I anticipate a good week for David Montgomery coming out of the bye, and a guy that definitely should be in more than 55% of lineups moving forward. Another segment here for put up or shut up, and that's going to start with Alex Collins. Now, he's been dealing with that groin injury, but the fact is Chris Carson put on IR just hours ago for the Seattle Seahawks, will miss the rest of the season. He's going under the knife. He's going to have neck surgery. This is Alex Collins' backfield moving forward as long as he stays healthy. The question is, how is Alex Collins going to perform? Is this going to be a guy that you really want in your lineup? Week 11 is going to be a tough one against the 8th ranked defense against the position in the Arizona Cardinals. This is a little bit of worry, but the fact is 5 teams so far this season have rushed at least 100 yards against the Arizona Cardinals. Again, 5 teams. 4 of those teams ran for at least 132 yards against the Arizona Cardinals. This is a team that you can rush against. Now, it is hard to get in the end zone when you're talking about the Arizona Cardinals. Only 3 rushing touchdowns seeded by the Cardinals this season. So we need to see obviously the yardage output from Alex Collins this week, but also a little bit more work in the passing game. We've seen him make a couple plays this season in the passing game. In fact, he saved one of his weeks with a late 25-yard reception. He is a guy that can make plays in the passing game, but they haven't been using him that way. You know, they have been using Travis Homer, and they are going to continue to use Travis Homer. So is this going to be just a guy that they use between the tackles in the running game, and then they mix in Travis Homer, a little bit of DJ Dallas, a little bit of Rashad Penny? Is this going to be just a full-blown running back by committee, and by being the starter, he only gets 10 carries and maybe a reception, maybe 2 receptions, in which case I don't care if he's a starter. I don't care if he's the lead back for the Seattle Seahawks. The problem is the Seattle Seahawks offense isn't very good. And if you're not going to be a running back in that offense that's getting at least 16 touches every week the way a Chris Carson was, then you're not very useful for me. So Alex Collins needs to put up this week. He needs to get the touches. He needs to lead this backfield. They need to give up on Rashad Penny. He has not been good at all this season. And they need to lead with Alex Collins and sprinkle in a little DJ Dallas and sprinkle in a little bit of Travis Homer. If we can do that, we can have a useful fantasy asset moving forward, and a guy that honestly is available in almost damn near 60% of ESPN leagues. So he's a guy, honestly, that should be picked up going into week 11, and let's see how this backfield works out for the Seattle Seahawks now that we know Chris Carson is gone for the season. So Alex Collins, a put up or shut up for you heading into week 11. We need to see the work. We need to see the work, especially knowing that Russell Wilson isn't the Russell Wilson that we've been seeing up to this point. Or can Russell Wilson be Russell Wilson moving forward? If Russell Wilson can be Russell Wilson, then Alex Collins should be useful. But if he's not, then we've seen what Alex Collins is in a middling offense these last several weeks, a guy that you can't trust. So we need to see not only Alex Collins get the work, but Russell Wilson start looking like himself. Just a quick reminder to make sure to like, share, subscribe, even watch another video moving forward. All of that helps grow this channel and get me to producing more content moving forward. I will produce more content, whether I get more subscribers, whether I get more likes or shares. It doesn't matter. I love doing this and I want to help. So, some running backs in a position to succeed in week 11. Obviously, A.J. Dillon. A.J. fucking Dillon gets that opportunity. A guy that's only 57% started right now. Now, we talked about him in the week 11 stock report. That is important because right now his stock is up, and it is a short-term stock spike. Now, his stock has been slowly rising, but this is a sharp and quick spike, and we will see it drop off a little bit once we see Aaron Jones come back from his injury. But right now, with Aaron Jones out with a mild MCL sprain, which he's going to be out at least week 11, maybe week 12. So if that's the case, this is a guy that's going to give you RB1 upside for 1 to 2 weeks. At the very least, week 11, this is a guy that can be, he has the capability of being the RB1 overall for week 11. That's how high his ceiling is in the Green Bay offense and his talent level. It's not just that we get a running back in the Green Bay offense. This is a guy that they took in the second round of the 2020 draft. They have a lot of value for him, and he's proven this year that he is a very capable back, and he has the ability to make plays in the NFL. Now, with Aaron Jones out of the way, he gets to be the primary back. He gets to touch the ball a majority of the time. They're not going to have him splitting the reps in week 11. He's going to be the guy, and he's also a guy that is used in the passing game and is capable in the passing game and will make plays in the passing game if given enough opportunity. So this is a guy who's going to get a lot of touches in week 11, a lot of opportunity in week 11, and I anticipate at least a touchdown and somewhere around 100 all-purpose yards, if not more. A guy, like I said, that has especially in PPR leagues, he has, I don't even know why I say especially, just in all leagues, he has the ability to be the number one running back for week 11, a guy that needs to be basically in every starting lineup. And if he's on waivers, because he is not 100% owned, if he's on waivers, you should pick him up and throw him in your lineup. It is that big of a deal. This is like week 1 Tyson Williams for the Baltimore Ravens. They just didn't have anybody else, so you knew he was going to get enough work. And that was an amazing one good week for Williams, and that's kind of what you're going to get out of Dillon. You're going to get one good week, maybe two, but this week you want him in your lineup. Another guy that I think is going to be a good start and kind of almost turning into the must start, at least in PPR leagues, especially in PPR leagues, is Michael Carter Jr. This guy's 60% started right now, ESPN leagues, but he right now has a top tier workload, averaging 13.75 rushes and 5.5 catches. 19 and a quarter total touches since their bye week. Now, I know that's kind of a small sample size, but the way I look at a fantasy season is 4 separate seasons, right? The way it used to be is we had 4 weeks. That was the quarter of your season. 8 weeks was the halfway point, right? So it was like a quarter of the season. So I look at every 4 weeks basically as its own separate season, because we see so many trends that do this and so many trends that last for a couple weeks, right? And so you see a trend going for a couple weeks, you kind of want to jump on it until it kind of dies off. And sometimes they don't die off. Talking about you, Cordero Patterson. Apparently they fucking need you. The Atlanta Falcons need you, Cordero Patterson. Get healthy and get back in the lineup, because there's a guy that we thought, he was going to be good, and let's ride this until it stops. But the only reason it stopped was because of an injury. So sometimes that trend continues, but sometimes it goes up and then it falls off. But that's why I look at it as 4 separate seasons through, or as a relay, if you want to look at more as a relay, as handing off the baton to the next quarter of the season. Let's see how these trends work. And it kind of helps you navigate your roster a little bit better if you look at your players that way. When you talk about a guy like Mike Williams, if you're looking at him in a quarter season perspective, you're looking at Mike Williams and going, that's a guy I can't play right now. Okay. And so that's how breaking it down helps you out. And when you look at Michael Carter in that macro vision, right, of the last 3-4 weeks that he's played with the New York Giants, he's been really good. He's had an elite workload. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the number 1 running back or a top 5 running back, but that gives him really good, safe RB2 value with RB1 upside. And that continues. That continues heading into week 11. In week 10, I had him as a beware. And I told you guys that, yes, it was totally possible for this guy to succeed based on his workload. And he's definitely a guy that you don't just sit. But it was definitely a beware moment for Michael Carter. He found a way to succeed against the hardest defense to run against, the hardest defense to score against at the position. And he found a way to succeed. Now, the one question that I do see in week 11 is the quarterback position. Guess what? It's Joe Flacco time. That's right. Joe Flacco's coming back. 500-year-old Joe Flacco's coming out of retirement. Not going to try to not be broken in half. Well, as long as he involves Carter at some sort of level, I'm talking like 4 to 5 receptions, Carter should be really good once again in week 11. We've only seen 1 week where the touches have kind of fallen off since the bye. So this trend is a trend that you kind of want to jump on until you see it fall off. And I don't know why it would. At this point, New York has committed to Carter. And for good reason. He has performed. So a guy that you definitely want to think about having in your lineup in week 11. Only 60% started in ESPN leagues. How about a guy that this is not your week, Zack Moss? Not your week, bro. Came back week 2 after being a healthy scratch week 1. It was like really good for like 3 weeks. Once again, going to that macro vision. And then since then, he's been tapering off, and it's been bad usage out of the bye. We talk about a guy in Zack Moss with 13 touches the last 2 weeks. That's not good. That's not what we need out of Zack Moss. We need touchdowns and we need touches. This is not a guy that is going to be a successful fantasy asset for your team if he's going to get anywhere from 7 to 9 touches. He needs like anywhere from 16 to 18 touches to be a deployable asset in fantasy unless you're in the deepest of leagues. And right now he's got a tough matchup, a very tough matchup against the Colts. That front 7 is very good. It is very tough to run against. It is the second toughest matchup for running backs. They've only ceded 3 touchdowns to running backs in 2021. And then you talk about Devin Singletary, who, no, he's not getting the big workload either, but he's eating enough into this workload that it's a 50-50 workload for both of these guys, making neither Devin Singletary nor Zack Moss a usable asset in fantasy. It sucks, but it is true. And right now, 34% start in ESPN leagues. That should be, to me, a lower number. And it's unfortunate because, this was a guy at the beginning of the season was a winner for me. But once again, going to that macro vision, I'm looking at Zack Moss recently, and that's a guy that, unless you're in the deepest of leagues, somebody that I don't want in my lineup because he is a true touchdown or bust running back. Another guy that you really should beware coming off of IR, coming back from injury, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, currently 19% started. And this is a stingy defense in Dallas that's only given up 4 touchdowns on the ground this season. They have been good. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was good until he got injured. He was kind of in one of the best little chunks of his young career. But coming out of the injury, Darrell Williams did nothing to prove that he's not going to be part of this backfield. And then you have a tough defense in Dallas. And then it could very well become almost like a Dallas Tampa Bay week 1 blow for blow type game. It makes me worry about using Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He doesn't have much in the passing game. He doesn't usually get the goal line work. Both of those jobs typically go to Darrell Williams. So this is a guy that I want to wait and see coming back from injury if I can. 19% started is about right for this guy. I understand that he's a guy that you can't necessarily just not start because the situation isn't perfect. He sometimes is just somebody you've been just dying to get back in your lineup, and I understand that. But for those that have the ability to kind of push it off, like even right now, this could be a terrible move also, but in a good matchup, has looked pretty explosive. And with Jeremy McNichols out for the Titans, Deontay Foreman, who's widely available out there, has a really exploitable matchup against Houston. And that's a way that you could pivot if you want to wait and see with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So there are other avenues. This is a good week for running backs and to pivot away from somebody if you don't like it. Another guy, Antonio Gibson, right? Like Antonio Gibson, he gets so much work, but he's not efficient with it. And it is another tough week for him. And that's a guy that I could see you pivoting away from if you who really wanted to try to get away from him. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a guy that I want to wait and see after week 11, reevaluate entering week 12. And if he looks good, I'm ready to slap him in my lineup. But coming off of injury, knowing that Darrell Williams will continue to be involved, I just want to wait and see one more week. Thank you for watching. I would like to encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I will continue to produce this content. If you guys have any start-sit questions, I join Mike Lynch and Rashad Taylor on 1080 The Fan here in Portland, Oregon. On Sunday mornings, we do last-minute start-sit advice starting at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. So basically the last half hour leading up to the kickoff of the early games, we do last-minute start-sit advice. You can send in your start-sit questions, and we will answer them. You can send them into 503-250-1080 and listen on Odyssey.com. I will have a link to the live broadcast in the description below. Again, thank you for watching, and make sure that you watch the Week 11 wide receiver start-sits as well.